for joining our today's webinar. The topic of the webinar is how to create and exploit weaknesses in the enemy camp. Thank you for attending it. Let's wait for a few more participants to come. By the way, guys, if it's the first time you attend my webinar, can you please tell me if everything is fine, if the sound is perfect and you can see me and the board? And actually, by the way, guys, where are you from? And what's your average? No, what's your rating on chess.com, for example, or on Lichess? Okay, today we have 6 attendees. Right now, I think maybe from 5 to 10 people are going to come. Okay, so Glenn is from United States. Okay, so you are over 1700 on chess.com. Okay, another 1700 player, Michael from Germany. Perfect. And Stefan from Germany. Okay, so you're almost 1900. Okay. Yeah, I think this webinar will be helpful for you. Okay, and uh, Leon Victor from Brazil. Okay, and Oliver from France. And of course, I'm from Russia. You should know it. I'm a FIDE master. So, and I conduct webinars every Sunday. So you can join them. Just follow me. And if you registered for one of the webinars, you should receive a notification about the next one when I announce them. Okay, fine. So what we are going to discuss today? Today we will be talking about weaknesses. By the way, guys, do you know what a weakness is? So, for example, what can we call a weakness? Who knows? Well, a weakness or a weak point. What is it? A field that can be exploited. Um, yes, but it's not the full definition. So there are two things that we can call a weakness. First, it can be a weak square. For example, if we are playing for white pieces, then this weak square should be located somewhere on the 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th rank. And if we occupy this square with one of our pieces, we get real benefits of it. Then we can call it a weak square. A pawn can be a weakness too. If it's pawn, it's easy to attack this pawn for us, and it's difficult for black to defend this pawn. Okay, so let's start. Please look at this position. This is a fragment from the game between Mikhail Botvinnik and Salo Floor. So what do you think? What white should do in this position? Just any suggestions? How to improve the position? How to create weaknesses? Or maybe some other plans that white can apply here? What do you think? No, just any ideas. If you're playing with white pieces, what plan would you apply here? And well, maybe you can find some tactical strikes in this position. Exploit d6, exactly. But how? Yes, d6 is a potential weakness. That's true. And if we locate our rook or knight on d6, then of course we can get some benefits. But how to get our pieces there, at least one piece to d6? What should we do first? Okay. Oh, yeah, so here we should focus on d6. However, it's not the only plan. Another idea for this position is to, okay, maybe someone exchange black rook. How is it possible while all the files are closed? Ah, black bishop. To trade the bishop for a knight? Okay, as for this position, it's a closed position. And I believe the knight on c3 is better than the bishop on g5. It's a really difficult task to find a good spot for this bishop on g5. It doesn't do anything on this diagonal. If black puts it to e7, then nothing really good can happen. So no, actually, to trade the knight for a bishop isn't a good idea. You can do so if then you get some other benefits. Okay, so for example, 5 can be played here. What's the idea of a5 move? It's to play a6 and probably force him to take what ruins his pawn structure and potentially weakens the pawn on c6 so that we can capture the c6 pawn. So this is one of the ideas. If, for example, here black plays a6, then knight a4, and now we exploit these weaknesses, the b7, then we can initiate a pawn march, b4, b5, so b7 will be a weakness. If, for example, in this position queen a3, then we can play knight a4 and knight c5, and after that 5. Queen h5 is a double attack here. Sorry. So queen comes to h5 and simultaneously attack two pieces, his rook and bishop. Of course, in this position, he can just go back, queen 7. That's why we first play knight c5 and then queen h5. Okay, so a5, knight a4, knight c5 is a good plan. That's right. However, in the game, White decided to apply another plan. They played c5 with the key idea to exploit the weakness of d6 square. a5, to stop the a pawn march. Because if not, then white is going to play e5 anyway. What to do now? So now we see here two weak squares and one weak pawn. So three weaknesses. What do you think? Which one to occupy and how? Of course, we can't capture the pawn on a5. Even if we attack it, he can simply defend it by queen d8, for example. So what to do in this position? How to improve our pieces location and exploit these weaknesses? What do you think? Bring the knight to c4. Okay. Can you find the route to get the knight to c4? Knight b1, a3, c4, not d2, because if we play knight d2 here, he can just trade, and then we can't really exploit the weakness. And I think it's likely to be a draw. Okay, knight b1, queen f8, knight a3, bishop d8, knight c4. Oh, it doesn't make sense to go to b6. Our next move is knight d6. And if bishop d6, yes, it's a trade, but c takes on d5, for example, and we get a protected passed pawn that we can maybe promote, or at least we keep one of his pieces defending d7 and d8 squares. And then we can apply another plan, for example, to open the b file and attack his b7 pawn. Or maybe to attack the pawn on c6 by pushing the a pawn after we trade the pawn on a5. So c takes on d6 is usually better here because when you create a protected passed pawn, it means that one of the pieces, one of the enemy pieces, uh, should stay to stop this pawn. Okay. So he plays rook b8 to protect on b7. What do you think? How to continue? So yeah, yes, Michael, this trade on d6 is fine because the main benefit of this position is this pawn on d6. So we remove the pawn from c5 to d6, and this is a protected passed pawn, what means that it distracts one of his pieces. That's the idea. So rook b8, I want you to find how to play for white now. What do you think? What's the idea of rook f1 move? h3 and g4. So to open the position there. No, it makes some sense, but what then? h3, g4. Let's say he trades, well, not queen g4, of course. Okay, h3, g4. He takes. Then what? We trade the queens. To attack on e6 probably. I don't know if it makes sense. But yes, g4 is one of the possible plans if we want to attack on e6. So for example, we don't need h3, we should play g4 right now, and in case if he takes, we take on g4 with our queen and put the pressure on e6. Yeah, that makes sense. However, that wasn't the best move. Actually, Mikhail Botvinnik played rook b1. Uh, he also didn't play the best move, and the best move in this position was knight b7 and knight sacrifice. Rook takes b7, queen c6, double attack. He has to play with the bishop to protect both rooks simultaneously. Then queen e6. Rook f7 should be played, otherwise we play c6 and gain a rook. So rook f7. And then we can play c6 d5 and promote two pawns together. I think he has to sacrifice the rook, or maybe a bishop for one pawn, but we actually gained three. Maybe bishop for two pawns. We will be one pawn up in a winning position. So that was one of the best options, maybe the best one. However, after rook b8, Botvinnik played a rook b1, queen d8. What do you think? How to continue, and what was the reason to play rook b1 move? What the rook does there? b4. Mm-hmm. Yes. So the idea is to open the file for the rook and then attack the b7 square. So, for example, here he has to take on d6. Now he is forced, because if he does this, then we can just play rook b2. Double the rooks, put some pressure on b7, and finally queen c6 can be a threat, because after pawn takes, we gain a rook on b8, and also trade our rook for a queen, winning a queen back. So bishop d6, c takes on e takes on d6 was. However, c takes on d6 was another possible option, but e takes on d6 is better because this is how we stopped him from playing b6 and b5. Queen a5 was played in the game, double the rooks on the b file. And in the game, he played this move, what allowed us to take on b7, for example. However, Botvinnik played another move. But what if queen a6? What if he just defends this um, pawn and this pawn as well? How to continue in this position? What do you think? Queen a4, and what's the idea of queen a4? Then queen e5. And okay, queen f4, queen e5. What does it give to us? A taken pawn on e6, but king f7 can be simply played, and what then? Play g4, opening the position. Maybe it can help us, but in this position there is a better way. Moreover, if you want to play queen e5, I want you to start with queen e3, because this is how you control the e file and don't allow queen coming to e2. As for rook b2, queen b3, I don't think it makes sense, because the b7 pawn, here, queen b3, because the b7 pawn is protected 3 times, so that we don't have enough attackers to gain this pawn. Rook e3. Oh, actually, I think the best way to play in this position is queen f1 and just offer a rook trade. Sorry, queen trade. Because if he takes the queen, no, let's say queen takes, king takes, then we just advance the pawn and just gain it. And if, for example, let's say, I don't know, king f7, a5, rook e8, rook b7, then rook b7, king to f6. Then how do we play? We can play rook b6, attack the pawn. Maybe let's do this. He takes on a5, rook c7, rook a6, but then then this move and d7, d8 on the next move. So he has to play with his rook to a7. And then he loses here. The game is winning absolutely, because we promote these 2 pawns. Okay, fine. So if he doesn't trade, then we can go to c4, attack on e6, and also use our rook to put more pressure on it. That's the idea. Okay, fine. However, in the game, he decided to sacrifice on b7, so that's why here we could just definitely, well, we could take here and then win the game. For example, well, actually, yeah, queen h5, rook f8, queen e2. And if, for example, rook e8, what looks natural in this position, then what do you think? Which move helps us to win the game immediately? No, here actually white wins in two moves. D7. D7, rook D8, for example. D7, rook D8, queen E6. Okay, I see. Yeah, looks like D7 is one of the best moves, maybe. Yeah, okay. Queen E5 is better because there is no way to defend the pawn on G7. But D7 wins as well. Fine. However, if he does queen D4, queen takes on D4, we can continue playing because then rook F7, queen D2, king escapes to H3, and yes, the game is winning anyway. For example, he moves the rook, then this, then we trade the rooks and push the pawn to D7 and win the game, of course. Okay, fine, let's go back. So rook b7 was a good way to win the game. However, queen e2 was played by Mikhail Botvinnik. Queen e8, rook e3, king f7. And then in this position, white should play king f3, then queen c4 to prevent b5 coming. And that's a winning position. Then exploit the pin on e6. So this is how white could win. But I don't know what happened in the game. I just show you how to exploit the weakness. However, rook b7 was already a winning move, and this is where white could win faster. Okay, coordinates. As for this game, that's all for this game. I'm going to show the second fragment from another game. So let's just try to sum it up. So first, of course, here you can apply several plans, but c5 to control the d6 square and occupy it with your knight is the best option. So knight b1, knight a3, knight c4, knight d6. And then our task was to open the b file for our rooks and put the pressure on b7. This is how white wins. And if, for example, black takes on d6, takes our knight on d6, we take with e or c pawn and create a protected pass pawn, what gives us a really huge advantage. Okay, fine. Let's close it. And the second game fragment that I want to show you is taken from the game between Lilienthal and between Ender Lilienthal and Paul Keres. So you know Paul Keres was a Soviet grandmaster. Then he was considered to be Estonian grandmaster. And if you, for example, if you ever seen banknotes of Estonia, then you can find his face on it. So he was a very popular Estonian chess player. Okay, so let me load the template for the webinar. Okay, and yes, you asked me about coordinates, so about the notation. Yes, I'll do this right now. Here it is. So white is winning here. How to find the winning plan? What do you think? Try to think and come up with a winning plan. And of course, think about the weaknesses that we can exploit in this. Push h pawn. Okay, what do you mean? To play h5 immediately, and what then? It's not obvious because if h5 and then h takes g6, h takes g6, it's fine. For black, it's fine. So you want to push the pawn and force him to take to occupy the f5 square. Yes, this is a good idea, but what move to play immediately? Because I'm not sure if he will take on h5 on the next move. I think he can just ignore and keep the position stable as it is. First g4. How does g4 helps to, well, let's say g4 d6, then h5? How does it help us to force him to take on h5? So another idea is to play d6 to occupy the square with the knight. Okay, that makes sense, but at the same time, this pawn can be a weakness. Let's say this move, then you do this, and then queen f8. So d6 is a weakness. What to do? Looks like now black is better, so that's a wrong plan. So what other ideas do you have? What is the weakness here? It's not actually. Oh, f5 can be a weakness. That's true. So the idea to push h5 is generally correct. The only task is to find the best move order when to play h5. Queen to g4, knight c4. Knight c4, and what then? Knight d6 is not a threat really, because then queen c5, then knight has to go back. Okay, so yeah, Michael, you're absolutely right. Knight g4, and then if black queen defends, let's say if black plays queen to d8, what is a natural move? Then yes, you're absolutely right. Queen a3, queen h6. That's why instead of playing queen d8, in this position he played queen f8. But of course, the queen on f8 has its own disadvantages. How to continue after queen f8? Because now queen e3 is faced with king f7, for example. No, I can show you. Queen e3, king f7, not h5, because if h5, then queen h6, king f7, then, for example, trade the queens and capture the pawn on f6. Just king f7 is enough. Now queen h6 doesn't really make sense, because if we trade the queens, then our chances to win the game will be close to zero. I think it will be a draw after we trade the queens. So we should gain a pawn and then trade the queens. Knight h6, that's not a good move. Queen c3, queen c7. Okay, if you do this move, then h5, knight retreats, then maybe knight a6, and this is how I stop your queen move, queen to c7. So then knight c5. This is the e4 is a weakness potentially. However, maybe knight a6 isn't the best option. Instead, we could, for example, play queen c5 and trade the queens. So it looks like queen c3, queen c5 isn't the best plan here. Okay, so now when queen is on f8, it's time to play h5. Here he took. What if he doesn't take? What if, for example, he plays, let's say, I don't know, let's say d6. If so, then we play h6. And after the king moves, doesn't really matter which square or two, we take on f6. That's the idea. What else can he do in this position? He can push the pawn, not d6, but h6 to stop our h pawn. But if so, we take king takes, and then just knight e5 is okay. Gain a pawn with a check. If g5, still h6 and take the pawn on f6. And even checkmate here. So that's why in this position, after h5, he has to take knight e3 to occupy the f5 square, d6 to release this knight from b8, then knight f5, check first, king to g6. Of course, we could take on h5, and that's a possible move too, but knight f5 is stronger. King g6. How to continue in this position? Who knows? So what white can do, what plan to apply in this position to find the weaknesses and then attack them? Knight h4, queen f5, and what does it give to you? Knight h4. Okay, let me make this move on the board. King g7. You can take on h5. If you want queen f5, then fine. But what then? Yes, you gain a pawn, but how to continue? Okay, maybe queen h5 is better in this position. Queen h5, knight a6, for example. Knight f5, king g8. What? How to play? Okay, maybe it's not an easy task to find how to win in this position. Let's go back to the position where, not to this position, because here h5 pawn doesn't really, we can't even count this pawn as a pawn. So in this position, queen c3, because now this idea with queen c7 makes sense. How to continue? No, if knight a6, the move that was played in the game, then queen c6, and d6 is now a weakness. What if queen d8 here? How? Oh, not queen e8, but queen d8. How would you play in this position after queen d8? There are too many weaknesses in black position. What is the other weakness that we can exploit? Queen b4. Queen b4 to take on d6. Looks good. And if a5, then queen d6. Queen d6, knight d6, knight d7. Now h5 pawn. So now the number of pawns is equal. Of course, white is better, but I can't say that this endgame is absolutely winning. There is a much better way to play instead of queen b4. Queen c8. You mean not queen c8, but force a trade? Wait. Queen c8, queen c8, queen c8, knight e7, king f7, knight takes here, and you take the pawn on a7. Clever, but I'm not sure. You take this or you take this or that, a7 or d6. Okay, let's say king e8. Knight a7. King d8, knight b5. King d7. So here is still the number of the pawns is equal. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that makes sense, but here you can still continue playing. Okay. So here you apply such a tactical motif that is called a connection between the sides of the board. So when you play on the one side, and then you can immediately switch to the other side. That's why here the best move is Queen C1. And this is how we exploit the weakness of H6 square. Queen comes to H6, after which he penetrates the king side, takes the H5 and H7 pawns with checks. Maybe Queen G7 gonna be played, A7 will be hanging. So from here, it's obvious that Black is absolutely losing. You see, Queen C1 is better. And if he does Queen F8 to cover the square, then we can play Queen C7 and take everything. This is almost what happened in the game, actually. So here, Knight A6, Queen C6, Knight C5, F3 to protect the E4 pawn, then D6 is hanging. Knight D3, Queen C7. B5, Queen A7. Now A2 is protected, and then white goes after the B5 pawn. The game is over. Okay, let's go back and try to sum it up. Of course, many of you caught the main idea to play h5, force him to take, and then occupy the f5 square with the knight, what improves our knight's position and also gives us the h6 square. And second idea was to get the queen to the c file and penetrate his camp while his queen can't really stop our queen penetration because it has to protect other weaknesses. However, to play h5 and to force him to take on h5, we should first play knight g4, because then h5 is a move with a temper. We are threatening with the h6, after which this pawn is a weakness. That's the main idea. Okay, fine. Let's close it. And the last game I want to show you today is the game between Zigbert Tarash and Emmanuel Lasker. Okay, so you see coordinates. We analyze this game as black. However, the position is better for white right now. And what do you think white should do in this position? How to play for white? What do you think? What comes to your mind? In this game, white played a mistake, and then black could find the weakness in the enemy camp. However, if you were white, I believe you would definitely find this move. It's obvious, and I don't know why white didn't really play it. Knight f5. Yeah, exactly. It's knight f5. So, for example, if white plays knight f5, then our bishop is hanging. We have to retreat with it. Then e takes d5 to initiate a trade on d file. Intermediate check, king f1, but it doesn't really help us. And in this position, white is better. His knight is better. He has a protected passed pawn on the a file. And of course, he is one pawn up. This is maybe the main factor that shows that he is better. However, in this game, instead of playing knight f5 immediately, he decided to take on d5. Why he takes on d5 is a mistake. What do you think? What does it allow black to play now? What do you think? Okay, here I forgot to add coordinates. Here it. Okay, fine. So what would you do if you were black in this position? Hmm. Yes, Michael, again, you're right. Now check with the bishop and block the file. Right. He can't take because otherwise we will be playing with a queen against a knight and rook. Our position will be better, just slightly better. Oh, I can show you. Rook a3, rook a3, queen a3, rook a3, king a3. Then just c takes on d5. So he has a full compensation for the queen, knight, rook, and one pawn. But because of his king weakness, black is slightly better. That's why he played this move, king f1. C takes on d5. And in this position, knight f5 isn't so strong because when previously he could play this move, we were forced to play bishop f8. While in this position, bishop f8 or any bishop moves are not required, we can just push the pawn forward. And if knight d4, just bishop d4, and his rook on e1 is hanging. But if he takes, we take with the bishop and save a piece. So if he takes here, fine, d takes a3, with the idea to push the pawn forward, but rook e2. And what do you think actually? How? Uh-huh. Yes, and you guard the 8 square. How could you play in this position? What do you think? How to continue for black? No, we wanted to play e2, but he blocked it with our rook, with his rook, and now our task is to find the plan how to improve our position. Push the f pawn. Okay, what other ideas do you guys have? So push the f pawn, f5 probably. Queen to g6. What's the idea of queen g6? So f5, f4 makes sense, of course, to support the pawn to e3 and use our rooks. Rook queen g6 with rook f5 idea. So let's say queen g6, king g1, and rook f5 is not a good move here. Let's say just queen c6. Rook g8 doesn't really make sense because the pawn on e2 is defending everything. Not the pawn, but the rook on e2 is defending everything here. Okay, so f5. Yeah, f5. So to push the f pawn was the correct decision. And here, for example, what? Rook d2, rook d4 can be played, but if so, then c5. Rook f4, queen e7, for example. This pawn is not hanging. If he takes, we just trade and then pin him. So if king g1, then rook d8, and he has some problems with the back rank. Then something like that. Rook d2 with the idea to trade, and the best thing he can do is to initiate a perpetual check. However, I'm not sure if it works. Maybe the king can escape. Oh, let's go through it. King g7, queen b7, queen c6. Queen e3. Yeah, it will be a perpetual check, of course. Yes. Okay. Yes, of course, Black wants to win, but at the same time, you should understand the position was originally better for White because Black were one pawn down. That's why in that situation, when you're playing against a Grandmaster, even a draw is a good result. So of course bishop e3 improved our position, and then having the pawn on e3 is good, but at least we need one more mistake from white here. So rook d4 was the best move. However, rook d3 is the other option, rook d3, f4. And then in case of g3, we just play rook e4. Everything is protected. The position is about equal. We definitely have a full compensation for the pawn lost b4. Of course, it's always a danger to change them, to change mind and to try to win in equal positions, because when you are trying to apply a winning plan in a drawish position, you take additional risk. However, it depends on the position, because if you see that you have no risk to lose, because you can always, like, I don't know, build a fortress, just simplify the position, but you have only one small change to win, you should exploit it. So for example, I was playing the position with a knight and two pawns against the bishop and two pawns. Because my king was more centralized, I had more space and more options to play, and I was playing with my knight, forcing the bishop to move, and my opponent's task was to use only safe squares, not to allow my bishop to penetrate and take his pawn weaknesses. And this is what he successfully did, and after 50 moves, we agreed to a draw. No, he could claim, but of course I said yes. Okay, so 50 moves passed. Let's agree for a draw. In that situation, I have no chance to lose, because it was just enough to sacrifice my knight for one of the pawns, because the other pawn was the edge pawn, and then I can just get my king to the corner. The game will be over. So here, of course, if you take additional risk and will play for victory, you may lose. Okay, let's go back. So again, instead of playing knight e5, what was good, rook d3 was played. And from now, it's black who is better. Queen e6 to support this bishop on e3. Rook e2. Okay, now I want you to find what plan to apply then. So it's black to move, how to continue. The bishop is protected, but what can we do to weaken white position? Just anything that comes to your mind. Of course, the position is too complicated and it's not easy to find a winning plan, but maybe you can suggest something that makes sense, and then we'll discuss it. Get the queen to the same diagonal. So to b6, so the same diagonal as our dark squared bishop is. So queen on b6 or a7. And what then? So how does it help us? So get okay, how to force his pawns to move? He can just stay with his pieces, like playing, I don't know, knight h1. Okay, no, no, of course not knight h1, but maybe rook from d3 to d1, then back to d3. Okay, yeah, you can suggest anything else. Okay, so yes, now c6, c5. Um, what's the idea of c5 move, for example? But d4 to support our bishop makes sense. Okay, so it's not about kicking the knight off, it's about reinforcing the bishop. f5, rook d1, f4. Yes, he moves. Then maybe d4 makes sense in this position. However, what if instead of knight h1 here he plays knight h5. Okay, and actually here the idea to play with the c pawn is good. Yes, I agree with you. That makes sense. But it will be a helpful maneuver in the future. Okay, knight h5. How would you play in case of knight h5? Rook e7? Why rook e7? What's the idea? Wins? No, you don't win the pawn after queen h6. Okay, okay, Sasha, the question. Why do you want to defend the g7 square? There is a king defending this square already. Okay, guys, yes, I was asking you about the exact move that can help to trap the bishop. And this move is not queen g6, not queen h6, but queen f5. What's the difference? If, for example, here you play queen h6, what looks natural, rook d5 gonna be played. And the knight on h5 is protected now. I believe the same thing can be played after queen g6. But after queen f5, we successfully protect the square. The only other thing he can do is to push the pawn to g4, but then en passant, the queen is hanging as well as his knight, so he takes, check, and he loses the knight on f5. So knight h5 actually loses a piece. That's why knight h1. d4, knight f2, and then queen a6 to attack and pin. And if he pushes a4, like this, then we can start pushing the c pawn to c4 to try to weaken his position, his pawn cover, or I mean his pawn structure on the queen side. However, he plays knight d3, attacking our rook. Rook g5. So now if knight f4, then how do we play? What do you think? How black can win in this position? Oh, actually, wait. It's just a one move victory. Take the knight. Yes, exactly. So just take the knight, because if queen takes f4, then just queen e2. Another move is rook f8 in this position. Rook f8, g3, and then rook f4, and the g pawn is pinned because then rook g1 is a checkmate. So knight f4 doesn't work, the pawn is not hanging, and he plays rook a1 to protect the a pawn. Queen h6. Another option was to play rook a5. However, I can't say that this is the best move because then after a4, c5 slightly traps our rook on a5. So first we play queen h6. He goes what? h2 is hanging. What if he does, for example, h3? How would you play in this position? Rook g3. Yes, rook g3, queen d5, and what's the next move? Queen takes on h3. No, okay, so no, queen h3 is a mistake in this position. Why? Because then he can play queen d4 check, bishop d4, rook e8 check, king g7, and now white can take because after rook g1, now the king escapes to e2. So that's the mistake. So rook g3, queen d5, and the winning move here is not rook g8 but f3. And if he takes with the pawn, then queen h3 and the game is over. If queen d4, well, queen d4 sacrifice doesn't make sense in this position, of course. That's why he decided to sacrifice the pawn on h2 and just played with his king. Queen h2, king d1, queen g1 check. If rook e1, then simply this move, and the position is absolutely winning. His rook is trapped on a1, and after the queen's trade, we can just advance the h or f pawn, and the game will be over. That's why knight e1, to protect on e2. Rook g2, e5 here. Yeah, rook g2, e5. Queen c6, rook 5 attacking on e6. He takes here, rook 8 to e7. Queen d8, king g7, and then he plays a4. And how to play in this position for black to finish the attack on the king side? What do you think? What to do to ruin his defense and to at least gain the material in this position? The evaluation of by the computer is minus 13 here. So it's absolutely winning. It's more than a queen. What? Bishop f2? I don't like bishop f2 move actually. Why? As well as bishop d2. Bishop f2, then what if rook e6, rook e6, then queen g5. So, and then there is a risk of a perpetual check. No, it's definitely not the best option. What other ideas do you have? Queen takes e1? No, queen e1, just rook e1 or king e1. Okay, guys, it's f3 move. G takes on f3. And now I want you to find the final move after which white should resign. What's the final move? Now bishop f2 is working. Actually, no, bishop is f2 is not working here because now queen is 7. Rook is 7, rook is 7 check. King moves to f6, rook e2, and while the f pawn was sacrificed, this advantage is not enough to win the game. And yes, so here only Sasha is correct. He suggests bishop g5. What's the idea of this move? The idea is that after all the trades, we attack this knight and queen simultaneously. So the d8. For example, his rook is hanging now. He has to take on e6. Okay, let me make the move rook e6. Rook takes on e6. The queen is hanging, as well as his knight on e1. And our bishop is defended. If here queen d7 check, then just rook e7. If queen c7 check, then just rook e7 with the same idea. So queen e5 is the only other reasonable move, and then bishop h4 to increase the pressure on this knight, and then the game is over. Then queen e3, for example. King d1, queen e1, and gain a rook. Actually, somewhere here after in this position after bishop h4, white resigned. So let's go back to the very. So of course, because of extra pawn, white's position was better, but instead of occupying the f5 square with his knight and forcing us to get our bishop to a passive position to f8, white played a mistake he took and allowed us to occupy the e3 square. Then we supported our knight, our bishop on a3 with f and d pawns, and started the kingside attack. Also trying to weaken his position on the queen side. But the main idea was to focus to the king side. So like this, then queen h6. And the problem was that he can't really do anything with the weakness on h2. Looks like not a weak pawn, but there is no king g1 move. h3 didn't work, and he had to sacrifice it. After that, we penetrated through the h file and delivered real problems to the enemy king. So this is how you can exploit the weaknesses. But don't forget about the main idea, what was to occupy the e3 square. If you see a weak square, then always think about which piece you can occupy it and what benefits can it give to you. And of course, how to support your piece standing there. And what happens in case if he trades your piece there? What benefits do you get? For example, in this position, if he somehow finds a way to take on e3 with his knight, then at least we get a protected passed pawn on e3. And it helps us to tie down one of his enemy pieces to our pawn. So this extra advantage can be a decisive advantage in the endgame. Okay, guys, so this is what I wanted to explain about weaknesses in the enemy camp. What else do I want to show? So if you remember on the masterclass that I conducted recently, it was last Sunday, I announced an online intensive chess course for beginners. So if your elo is below 1200 on chess.com, then you can join it. It will be actually 4 weeks intensive program consisting of 8 group lessons, 2 individual lessons, and of course a lot of homework. You can also get a bonus, which is my course that is devoted to openings. However, if many of you are quite strong players, about 17 or 1800, then I doubt that this course is good for you. I think you can maybe enroll in one of my courses that are for advanced players. But no, this is for beginners, and I believe after this course, after passing this course, beginners at least can stop blundering pieces. So just if you want to join, just use this link and join. Also follow me on chess.com and don't miss our webinars that I'm going to conduct every Sunday, of course, with some exclusions. Okay, fine. Thank you for your attention. Hope to see you next Sunday.